Thanks for clicking on another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Cyborg, and we just got done watching one of the most anticipated games of the entire NBA season between the San Antonio Spurs and the Detroit Pistons, the number 2 seed in the Western Conference and the number 1 seed in the East. This game was in Detroit, a game that the Spurs won 114-103 behind monster performances from Devin Vassell, Victor Wembanyama, and Stephon, both on the offensive and defensive end of the court for those guys. This was a game I was so excited for because if you asked me today, these would be my picks to make the NBA Finals both out of the East and the West, and this would be a series that I would be dying to watch for 7 games. These two teams actually play again here in a couple of weeks, and the Detroit Pistons have a very hard schedule coming up. But I want to focus a lot tonight talking about the San Antonio Spurs and why I was so impressed by this team. We have been impressed time and time again watching them play against good competition. We saw them win 3 out of 4 games against the Oklahoma City Thunder, 3 in a row, I believe, all in December. Maybe one was the end of November. I'd have to check the dates, but right around the same time. And you just see the way that this team plays defensively and how much potential they have on the offensive end of the court. Tonight, Devin Vassell hit 7 3-pointers and had 28 points. They got off to a 14-2 lead off the rip, and you could tell how physical this game was. Now, what the Pistons do is they are number 1 in the NBA in blocks, they're number 1 in the NBA in steals, and they're number 1 in the NBA in fouls. So you know they are going to test the referees all night to see what they're going to call. And a lot of teams that they play against fold in a scenario like that. It is really hard to play against a team like that. It gets in your head. You feel like you're falling on the ground. You can start begging for calls. And it can really mess with opposing teams. And that's part of the reason that the Pistons have a 42-14 record like they do and are number 1 in the Eastern Conference. The Spurs' resiliency to fight through that was so impressive because, like I said, they jumped off to this 14-2 lead behind the 3 threes from Devin Vassell at the beginning of the game, but they actually lost the first quarter. The Pistons came back and had a lead 27-24 at the end of the first. And at that point, you see how physical Jalen Duren's playing, how physical Cade Cunningham is playing. They both had 2 fouls in the first quarter, and it felt like Wemby was on the ground a lot. At times throughout this game, the Spurs very easily could have folded, but they showed resiliency that I believe that they will need to make a run to the NBA Finals. And these are the number 2 defensive rating team in the NBA and the number 3 defensive rating team in the NBA. So you know that when these two teams match up, it's going to be hard to score the basketball. It's going to be hard to generate quality looks for both of the guards, especially because defensively in the paint, both of these teams are very good. Obviously, when you're looking at the Spurs, there's a player in Victor Wembanyama, who is one of the greatest rim protectors we've ever seen, if not the greatest. We just would like to see him do it for a longer stretch of time before we start giving him that title. But on the other end, Jalen Duren is an absolute dog. He made things very hard for Victor Wembanyama, and we saw both point guards struggle. De'Aaron Fox and Cade Cunningham both shot a low percentage. And overall for the game, the Spurs shot 42% from the field, and the Pistons shot 38% from the field and 19% from the 3-point line. This was a game, both teams had 16 turnovers, and there was 41 combined fouls between the two teams. This was a highly entertaining basketball game because you will be hard-pressed to find a game that's more physical in the modern NBA, and probably the most physical regular season game I've seen in years. And you could tell it from the jump. And it started to feel like certain players were pressing a little bit. But as they settled in and the game went on, you saw monster performances. So for the game, Devin Vassell finished with 28 points on 7 3-pointers. Victor Wembanyama had 21 points, 17 rebounds, 6 blocks, 4 assists, and 8 offensive rebounds. And then Stephon had 16 points and 11 assists. But what's more impressive is the defense he was playing on Cade Cunningham, who has been an MVP candidate to up to this point in the season. He went 5 of 26 from the field. So the ability to hold a player like Cade Cunningham to 5 of 26 is why I think that this Spurs team is going to be so dangerous when you look at the playoffs coming up here soon. The two teams that feel like the biggest threats in the West to the Spurs are the Thunder and the Nuggets. What do they both have in common? Well, one, both have incredible scoring point guards who can score from all three levels. And the Spurs have the ability to defend that with their, Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper, and even De'Aaron Fox is fast. He can stop you from getting to spots. And they play such physical defense on the perimeter that they match up well against the Thunder. And I think that's part of the reason that we have seen them win 3 out of 4 games against the Thunder earlier this season. But also, when you look at the Nuggets and Chet Holmgren to a lesser degree, you have Nikola Jokic, a very quality big man. Victor Wembanyama creates such a challenge for players in the paint. And he did not have his best shooting night. He was 6 of 16 from the field, 21 points. That doesn't feel like one of the monster Wemby games that we've seen at times this season. But I think that this was absolutely a great game from Victor Wembanyama that shows truly how valuable he is, even when he's not scoring at that level. He had 17 rebounds and 6 blocks. And what you notice is that when the Pistons are driving the basketball and going to the paint trying to score, Wemby would have blocks that the Pistons players thought almost every time was a goaltend. After every time they shot and Wemby blocked it, you see them throwing up their arms, complaining. It's actually, I want to make a little comparison to the NFL, if any of y'all watch football. They said Lamar Jackson, in his first 4 or 5 years in the NFL against the NFC, which is the opposite conference that he plays in, so the teams that he doesn't play very often, was 20-0. They couldn't beat him, and he's such a unique talent. He was so hard to tackle. He's so fast, and no one had really seen anything like him, so they didn't know how to game plan against him. And that's the feeling I got watching the Pistons play Wemby tonight. That when they drove to the basket, they really had no idea what else to do other than to throw up those shots. And when they kept getting blocked, they couldn't understand how a player was capable of blocking the shots that they were putting up. And that's the challenge that Wemby represents. You gotta remember, a lot of these players in the NBA were the tallest guys on their high school team. Were very tall for college. A lot of very tall and long and athletic players who are not used to having to manipulate their shot so much to get over a guy with the length of Victor Wembanyama, but also a guy who is as smart and has anticipation like Wemby and really cares on the defensive end of the court. And that's what I love about him. He's so clearly the best defensive player in the NBA. It's unbelievable. We saw both of these teams obviously are like I mentioned, the 2 and the 3 best defensive rating teams in the NBA, but they generate turnovers, they generate blocks, and they're number 1 and number 2 in the NBA in percentage of their points that are scored off of turnovers. So defense leads to offense for both of these teams. We know the Spurs right now are red hot. They've won 9 games in a row. Tonight's win brought them to within 2.5 games of the Oklahoma City Thunder. And if Chet continues to sit out, or not Chet, if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander continues to sit out, I have no reason to believe that the Spurs cannot catch them. The Spurs, what am I trying to say? They're number 4 in the NBA in net rating. The Pistons are number 2. So both of these teams have had, incredible starts to the season. They play again here in a couple weeks. Tonight, the Pistons out-rebounded the Spurs 55-50. But the biggest difference in this game was three-point percentage. The Spurs went 18 of 40 from the three-point line, 40%, and the Pistons were 7 of 36, 19%. If you are not an elite three-point shooting team and you go up against the Spurs and Wembanyama, you are going to have a very tough time generating offense. And I think that's part of the reason, or part of the problem that the Pistons ran into tonight. They're not a great three-point shooting team. They have Duncan Robinson, who's a very good three-point shooter. But aside from that, they have a lot of guys on the court who prefer to score from the mid-range and in. So it made it so hard to generate quality looks for the Pistons all night. And Wemby was just really having an impact on this game. And it's why I believe that even in a game that he didn't score very much, he showed why he's still probably going to be the best player in this league in very short order, and why even though he probably won't win MVP this year, he truly might be the most valuable player in the NBA. But what I love about this Spurs team is the fact that they are so deep. They have this is something that because they had a few years where, they were rebuilding their roster and getting assets, that they were able to finally cash in. And right now they've created a real contender. We've seen in the NBA year after year that a team that we think is going to be good coming into the season takes that jump and wins the NBA Finals. The Nuggets a few years ago, we thought they'd be really good. They made that jump with Jokic, win the NBA Finals. The Celtics, we thought they'd be good, came into the season as a young team, won the NBA Finals. The Thunder last year took that jump, won the NBA Finals. But none of those teams repeated. It's so hard in the NBA to repeat. It's why I don't think the Thunder are going to repeat this season, because you start to deal with injuries, you start to deal with complacency. And the Spurs don't have any of those problems. They come to play each and every night. They're 41-16 now on the season. Wemby is one of the most competitive players in the NBA, and I think he truly knows what's at stake. He knows the gravity of what he is capable of and his potential, and the fact that he could be one of the greatest players to ever play this game, if not the greatest, depending on his health. And, we'll see some of his accomplishments. This season in particular, I think he can only miss 4 more games before he falls out of contention for some of these end-of-season awards. But all in all, if you are a Spurs fan, you have to be stoked about the way they played tonight. The Pistons are a hard team to go into Detroit and play against. Jalen Duren was incredible. He's so physical, he's so strong, that it makes it really difficult for Wemby to do maybe what he's able to do against most other centers in this league. But he was still able to generate so much offense, and he really closed this game out strong. He scored a few buckets at the end of the fourth quarter and some free throws to really put this game away. In a night that De'Aaron Fox was 4 of 17 from the field and 0 of 5 from 3, they're able to overcome that because they have Julian Champagnie, who had 17 points. Wemby obviously had 21. Vassell, 28. Castle, 16. Keldon Johnson gave you 9. Dylan Harper didn't do a whole lot tonight, but they have so much depth. And I'm a Luke Cornett fan coming off the bench there. He didn't do a whole lot tonight, but they have so much they can throw at you that it makes it hard to beat the Spurs on a night-to-night basis. And why I think in the Western Conference, I feel very confident that the Spurs can beat anybody. Obviously, we haven't seen Wemby in the playoffs, and that will be a big question mark. But I think he's absolutely capable of living up to the moment. I think he's prepared for most of his life for moments like these. And I can't wait to watch the Spurs team play in the playoffs. On the flip side, if I'm the Pistons, I'm not that worried about tonight's game. You played a red-hot Spurs team. It was fairly close. You had a rough shooting night from Cade Cunningham. You need to figure out probably how you can try to increase your three-point percentage a little bit, whether that's finding a way to generate better looks or, figuring out, can you play a Kevin Huerter or someone who's a little more capable of hitting some of these three-pointers? Because just in modern basketball, it is so important. And if you want to truly make that run to win the NBA Finals, that is something that you're going to have to be able to do at times. But all in all, both of these teams are awesome. This was a great basketball game, and I can't wait to watch both of these teams going forward. That's all we got for you tonight. Appreciate y'all watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Go.